The phone rang at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, right in the middle of my organic chemistry lab. I almost didn't answer. Professor Martinez had already given 3 students detention for phone interruptions this semester, but something about the persistence of the buzzing made my stomach clench. Miss Wilkinson, this is Janet from the university bursar's office. My name is Gwendolyn, and I'm a sophomore at State University studying pre med. I've never missed a tuition payment in my life. My grandmother made sure of that when she set up my college fund before she died 2 years ago. I'm calling about your account balance, Janet continued, her voice professionally neutral but tinged with something that sounded like pity. Your spring semester payment was returned for insufficient funds, and we haven't received any communication from you regarding alternative payment arrangements. The test tube in my hand nearly slipped. I'm sorry, what? There has to be some mistake. My tuition is automatically withdrawn from my education fund every semester. I understand your confusion, but according to our records, the payment was attempted on January 15th and rejected by your bank. Your account shows a balance of negative $47. The lab around me seemed to fade into white noise. Students continued their experiments, the ventilation system hummed overhead, but all I could hear was my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. That's impossible, I whispered, stepping away from my lab station. Can you check again? The account number is. Miss Wilkinson, I've triple checked. If payment isn't received by Friday, you'll be dropped from all classes and barred from campus housing. Friday. That was 3 days away. I hung up and immediately called the bank, my hands shaking as I dialed. The automated system confirmed my worst nightmare account balance, negative 47.23. Last transaction, withdrawal of 47 that was $892 on January 10th, $47,000. Gone. My lab partner, Marcus, glanced over with concern. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I need to go, I managed, grabbing my backpack and rushing out before Professor Martinez could protest. I tried calling my parents 6 times on the walk back to my dorm. Each call went straight to voicemail. Mom's phone, Dad's phone, even the house landline. Nothing. They were avoiding me, and that realization hit like a punch to the gut. My roommate was at her boyfriend's place, so I had the room to myself to completely fall apart. I sat on my narrow dorm bed, staring at my phone, trying to piece together what could have happened. Bank error? Identity theft? Some kind of administrative mix up? But deep down, a cold certainty was already settling in my chest. I called my best friend Faith, who picked up on the second ring. Gwen? What's wrong? You sound terrible. My college fund is gone, I said, the words feeling surreal as they left my mouth. All of it. And my parents won't answer their phones. What do you mean, gone? Someone withdrew $47,000 last week, the entire balance. Faith was quiet for a long moment. Who else has access to that account? Just my parents. They're the trustees until I graduate. The words tasted bitter. Faith, what if. Don't jump to conclusions. There could be a reasonable explanation. But even as she said it, I could hear the doubt in her voice. Faith knew my family. She'd witnessed enough dinners at our house to understand the dynamics, how my brother Damien could do no wrong, how my parents bent over backward to fix his problems, how I was expected to be grateful for whatever scraps of attention they threw my way. You need to go home, Faith said firmly. Tonight. Don't give them time to prepare excuses. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm being paranoid? Then you'll apologize and figure out what really happened. But Gwen, if you're right. She trailed off, but I knew what she meant. If I was right, my own parents had stolen my future. I was packing a bag when my phone buzzed with a text from Mom, the first communication I'd received from her in 3 weeks. Come home. We need to talk. No explanation, no apology for ignoring my calls. Just a summons, like I was a child being called to the principal's office. I stared at those 6 words until they blurred together. In all my 20 years, Mom had never wanted me to come home unexpectedly. Family dinners were obligations, holidays were performances, but urgent conversations? Those were reserved for Damien's latest crisis. My hands were steady as I typed back, on my way. But inside, I was already breaking apart. The 2 hour drive home felt like descending into hell. Every mile marker brought me closer to answers I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. I pulled into our driveway at 8 p.m. The house looked exactly the same: manicured lawn, perfect shutters, the kind of suburban facade that screamed successful family. But something felt different. Maybe it was the way the living room curtains were drawn tight, or how Dad's car was parked at an odd angle, like he'd rushed home. I didn't bother knocking. Mom? Dad? I called out, stepping into the foyer. In here, Mom's voice came from the kitchen, clipped and cold. They were all waiting for me. Mom sat at the kitchen island, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the late hour. Dad stood by the coffee maker, not making coffee, just fidgeting with his tie. And there was Damien, my 22-year-old brother, slouched in a chair, scrolling through his phone like this was just another Tuesday night. Sit down, Gwendolyn, Mom said, gesturing to the chair across from her. I'd rather stand. Where's my money? Dad cleared his throat. Now, sweetheart, let's not jump to where is my money? Mom's jaw tightened. We used it. The simple admission hit me like a slap. No build-up, no gentle explanation. Just cold, brutal honesty. You used it, I repeated slowly. You used my college fund. The money Grandma left specifically for my education. Family helps family, Mom said, her voice taking on that sanctimonious tone I knew so well. Damien was in trouble. I looked at my brother, who hadn't glanced up from his phone once. What kind of trouble? The kind that doesn't concern you, Damien muttered. It concerns me when it costs me my education. Dad stepped forward, his hands raised in that patronizing gesture he used when he thought I was being dramatic. Gwen, honey, we can figure this out. There are student loans, financial aid. Are you insane? My voice cracked. I'm supposed to take on debt because you stole from me? We didn't steal anything, Mom snapped. We're your parents. We made a decision for the good of this family. For the good of Damien, you mean? Finally, my brother looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, and there was something desperate lurking behind his usual arrogance. You don't understand the situation. Then explain it to me. Damien glanced at our parents, some silent communication passing between them. Mom nodded slightly. I owed some people money, he said. Bad people, the kind who don't negotiate payment plans. How much money? 47,000, Dad said quietly. The exact amount of my college fund. What a coincidence. Let me guess, I said, my voice getting steadier as my anger crystallized. Gambling? Damien's silence was answer enough. So you gambled away $47,000, and instead of facing the consequences, you had Mom and Dad steal my future to bail you out. It wasn't stealing, Mom said sharply. The money was in a family trust. We had every right. Grandma left that money for my education. She made that crystal clear. Your grandmother is dead, Mom said with brutal finality, and the living take precedence over the dead. I stared at her, this woman who'd given birth to me, raised me, and apparently thought so little of me that she'd destroy my future without a second thought. I could have died, Damien said suddenly, his voice small. These weren't the kind of people you default on. So I should sacrifice my career to save you from your own stupidity? You're being dramatic, Dad said. Plenty of people get through college with loans. You're smart, you'll figure it out. I shouldn't have to figure it out. That money was mine. Mom stood up, smoothing down her skirt. What's done is done. We can help you fill out loan applications this weekend. Help me? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You steal my money and then offer to help me beg for scraps? Watch your tone, young lady, Dad warned. Or what? You'll steal something else from me? Damien finally put his phone down and looked at me directly. His expression was a mixture of guilt and defiance that I'd seen 1,000 times before. The same look he'd worn when he crashed Dad's car at 16, when he got expelled from his first college, when he maxed out Mom's credit cards. Look, Gwen, he said, if I go down, we all go down. These people don't just come after me, they come after my family, our family. So, you made that choice for all of us? I made the choice that kept us alive. Mom reached across the counter and pulled out a manila folder. Inside were papers, official looking documents with letterheads I didn't recognize. These are the IOUs, she said, sliding them toward me. See for yourself what we were dealing with. I glanced at the papers. Names I didn't recognize, amounts that made my head spin, dates going back months. At the bottom of the stack was a photo, Damien, clearly taken without his knowledge, with a red circle drawn around his face. They sent this to the house, Dad said quietly, with a note saying they knew where he lived, where we all lived. I looked up at Damien, who was staring at the photo with something that might have been shame. If I'm destroyed, we all go down, he said, echoing his earlier words. Mom folded her hands. Be grateful you're not Damien. I stood there, surrounded by my family, and realized I'd never felt more alone in my life. I walked out of that house and kept walking, past the manicured lawns, past the identical mailboxes, past the playground where Damien and I used to swing as kids. My feet carried me through the suburban maze while my mind reeled. The night air was sharp against my face, but I barely felt it. Every step echoed with Mom's words, Be grateful you're not Damien, as if I should thank them for ruining my life to save his. I ended up at the 24-hour diner on Maple Street, the one Grandma used to take me to after my piano recitals. The same cracked vinyl booths, the same flickering neon sign advertising World's Best Pie. I slid into our old booth and ordered coffee I didn't want. Rough night? The waitress, a woman about Mom's age with kind eyes, refilled my cup without being asked. You could say that. She nodded knowingly and left me alone with my thoughts. I pulled out my phone and called Faith. Gwen? How did it go? They stole it. My voice sounded hollow even to me. Every penny, for Damien's gambling debts. Oh my God. What are you going to do? I don't know. They acted like I should be grateful they didn't ask me to take out a loan to pay his debts too. This is insane. Can't you sue them or something? With what money? And they're my parents' Faith. They had legal access to the account. But morality doesn't pay tuition. Faith was quiet for a moment. Come stay with me tonight. Don't go back there. I can't impose. You're not imposing. My mom adores you, and we have that pull-out couch in the basement. Just don't be alone right now. I almost said yes. Almost let Faith wrap me in her family's warmth and pretend this nightmare would somehow resolve itself. But something held me back. I need to think. I'll call you tomorrow. After I hung up, I sat in that booth until 3 a.m., nursing cold coffee and trying to make sense of how my family could betray me so casually. The diner was nearly empty except for a trucker at the counter and a couple of teenagers sharing a milkshake. That's when the memory hit me. Grandma and I, sitting in this exact booth 2 years ago. She'd been frail then, the cancer already winning, but her eyes were still sharp as steel. They always take, Gwen, she'd said, stirring sugar into her tea with shaking hands. Your mother, your father, they see resources, not people. Promise me something. Anything, Grandma. Trust what I leave for you. Not just the money, all of it. There are things I've put in place, protections you don't know about yet. At the time, I'd thought she was being paranoid. Mom and Dad weren't perfect, but they wouldn't actually steal from me. Would they? I drove back to my dorm as the sun was rising, exhaustion making everything feel surreal. My roommate was still gone, so I collapsed on my bed and tried to sleep. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Damien's smug face, heard Mom's cold dismissal. Around noon, I gave up on sleep and opened my laptop. Maybe there was something I'd missed, some detail about the trust that could help me. I scrolled through old emails, looking for anything related to Grandma's will or the college fund. That's when I found it. Buried in my inbox from 6 months ago was an email with the subject line, For Your Eyes Only. The sender was Grandma's email address, but the timestamp showed it had been sent 3 weeks after her funeral. My hands trembled as I opened it. My dearest Gwen, if you're reading this, it means my automated email system worked as planned. It also probably means your parents have done something terrible with your college fund. I know my daughter better than she thinks I do. Vera has always chosen Damien over everyone else, including you. I've watched her enable his destructive behavior for years, and I knew she'd eventually sacrifice your future for his. That's why I took precautions. Contact Kent Mason immediately. He's the family lawyer, and he has instructions I gave him before I died. There are things about your trust fund that your parents don't know, things I made sure they couldn't access. Don't let them destroy you, sweetheart. You're stronger than they think, and you have more power than they realize. All my love, Grandma Lorelei P.S. Kent's number is 55VADS147. Tell him the roses need watering. He'll know what it means. I read the email 3 times, my heart pounding harder with each word. Grandma had known. She'd actually predicted this exact scenario and put safeguards in place. I grabbed my phone and dialed Kent's number before I could lose my nerve. Mason Law Office. This is Kent. Mr. Mason? This is Gwendolyn, Lorelei's granddaughter. Gwendolyn! His voice immediately became warmer. I've been wondering when you'd call. What can I do for you? I took a deep breath. The roses need watering. There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. I see. Can you be in my office this afternoon? We have a great deal to discuss. What time? How's 3 o'clock? I'll be there. As I hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced since that phone call from the Bursar's office. Hope. Kent's law office was nothing like I'd expected. Instead of the sterile corporate environment I'd imagined, it felt more like a professor's study: dark wood paneling, leather bound books, and the faint smell of pipe tobacco. Kent himself was younger than I'd pictured, maybe late 30s, with graying temples and kind eyes behind wire rimmed glasses. Please, sit down, he said, gesturing to a chair across from his massive oak desk. I've been waiting for this conversation for 2 years. You knew they'd steal my money? Your grandmother was very specific about the possibilities. He pulled out a thick file folder. Lorelei came to me 6 months before she died with some very particular instructions. What kind of instructions? Kent opened the folder and spread several documents across his desk. Tell me exactly what happened with your college fund. I walked him through everything: the Bursar's call, my parents' casual admission, Damien's gambling debts, their expectation that I'd just accept it and move on. Kent nodded grimly as I spoke. And they told you they had every right to use the money because they were trustees? Yes. Mom said the living take precedence over the dead. Your mother is wrong. Kent pulled out a document and turned it toward me. This is the actual trust agreement your grandmother established, not the simplified version your parents were shown. I leaned forward, scanning the legal language. Most of it was incomprehensible, but Kent pointed to a specific section highlighted in yellow. This is what we call a poison pill clause, he explained. Your grandmother included very specific conditions about how the trust funds could be used. Any withdrawal not directly related to your educational expenses constitutes a breach of fiduciary duty. What does that mean in plain English? It means your parents just committed a felony. The words hit me like a physical blow. A felony? Misappropriation of trust funds. In this state, it's a Class C felony punishable by up to 5 years in prison and full restitution. Kent's voice was matter of fact, but his eyes were watching me carefully. But that's not the most interesting part. He pulled out another document. Your grandmother also included what's called a forfeiture clause. If your parents breach their fiduciary duty, they automatically forfeit any claim to their own inheritance from her estate. Their inheritance? The house they're living in? The one your grandmother left them in her will? It reverts to you, along with her investment portfolio, which is currently worth about $200,000. I stared at him, my mouth opening and closing like a fish. 200,000? Your grandmother was quite wealthy, Gwendolyn. She just didn't advertise it. Kent leaned back in his chair. She also anticipated that your parents might try to manipulate you if they discovered the clause, so she included one more provision. What provision? If you choose to enforce the forfeiture clause, your parents have 72 hours to restore your college fund in full, plus penalties and interest. If they can't, which they can't since they used the money to pay off Damien's debts, then criminal charges are automatically filed. My head was spinning. You're saying I could have them arrested? I'm saying your grandmother gave you the power to hold them accountable for their actions. Kent's voice was gentle but firm. The question is, what do you want to do with that power? I sat in silence for a long moment, processing everything he'd told me. My parents had stolen from me, dismissed my pain, and expected me to be grateful for their betrayal. And now I had the power to destroy them completely. What happens to Damien? The forfeiture clause only applies to your parents as trustees, but if criminal charges are filed, the investigation will likely uncover his role in the theft. Conspiracy charges are possible, so I could send my entire family to prison. You could, or you could choose to handle this privately, demand restitution, take control of your inheritance, and let them keep their freedom. Kent reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope. Before you decide, your grandmother left this for you. She said to give it to you only after I'd explained the legal situation. I took the envelope with trembling hands. My name was written on it in Grandma's familiar handwriting, along with a note for when you need to choose between justice and mercy. Take your time, Kent said. This is a decision that will change your life and theirs forever. I stared at the envelope, feeling its weight. Inside was probably more wisdom from the only person who'd ever truly understood me, but I was terrified to open it because I knew that once I read whatever was inside, there would be no going back. If I do this, I said slowly, if I enforce the clause, there's no undoing it? Kent shook his head. Once I file the paperwork, the wheels of justice start turning. Your parents will lose everything, and they'll likely face criminal charges. And if I don't? Then they get away with stealing your future, and you spend the next 2 years drowning in student debt while they live in the house your grandmother left them. I looked down at the envelope again. Grandma's final words to me, waiting to be read. Can I have some time to think about this? Of course, but Gwendolyn, Kent's voice was serious. Whatever you decide, make sure it's a decision you can live with, because once you choose, there's no going back. I drove back to campus in a daze, Grandma's letter burning like coal in my jacket pocket. Every red light felt like the universe giving me time to think, but my thoughts kept spinning in circles. Back in my dorm room, I sat on my bed and stared at the envelope for 20 minutes before finally tearing it open. My dearest Gwen, if Kent has done his job, you now know the truth about what I've left you. Not just money, but power. The power to hold your family accountable for their choices. I know this feels overwhelming. I know you're probably wondering if I'm asking you to destroy the people who raised you, but let me tell you something I learned too late in my own life. Enabling bad behavior isn't love, it's cowardice. Your mother has spent 22 years teaching Damien that his actions have no consequences. Your father has spent just as long teaching you that your needs don't matter. They will never change unless they're forced to. I'm not telling you what to do, sweetheart, but I am telling you this. You deserve better than being their afterthought. You deserve to be someone's priority, even if that someone has to be yourself. Whatever you choose, I'm proud of you. All my love, Grandma Lorelei P.S. Remember what I used to tell you about roses? Sometimes you have to cut away the diseased parts to save the whole plant. I was still holding the letter when my phone rang. Damien's name flashed on the screen. What do you want? We need to talk. His voice was strained, none of his usual arrogance. Can you meet me at the campus coffee shop? Why would I want to do that? Because I know you went to see a lawyer today. My blood ran cold. How do you. Mom had you followed. She's not stupid, Gwen. She knows Grandma probably left you some kind of escape hatch. And you're calling to what? Threaten me? I'm calling to beg you. That stopped me short. Damien had never begged for anything in his life. I'll be there in 10 minutes, I said. The coffee shop was nearly empty at 4 p.m. on a Wednesday. Damien was already there, hunched over a table in the back corner. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, his usually perfect hair disheveled. You look like hell, I said, sliding into the chair across from him. I feel worse. He wrapped his hands around his coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping him warm. Gwen, I know what I did was wrong. Do you? Because yesterday you seemed pretty convinced I should be grateful you didn't get us all killed. I was scared. I still am. He looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw my brother instead of the golden child who could do no wrong. Those people I owed money to, they didn't just threaten me, they threatened all of us. So, you made the decision for all of us. I made a stupid decision that spiraled out of control. He leaned forward. But if you do this, if you use whatever Grandma left you to destroy Mom and Dad, you'll be making a decision for all of us too. The difference is my decision would be about justice. Yours was about covering your own ass. Damien flinched. You're right. But Gwen, if you send them to prison, what happens to me? I can't take care of myself. I've never had to. Maybe it's time you learned. I'll die out there. You know I will. I stared at him, this 22-year-old man who'd never held a real job, never faced real consequences, never had to be responsible for anything in his entire life. That's not my problem anymore. Please. His voice cracked. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking you to think about what this will do to our family. Mom and Dad made a mistake, but they were trying to protect me. They weren't protecting you, they were enabling you. There's a difference. My phone buzzed with a text. Faith, how did the lawyer meeting go? Call me. I showed Damien the message. You know what Faith would tell me to do? Burn us all to the ground? She'd tell me to choose myself for once, to stop setting myself on fire to keep you warm. Damien's face crumpled. So that's it? You're going to destroy everything? I haven't decided yet. What would it take? For you to not do this? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to negotiate? Fine. Give me back my $47,000 right now. You know I can't do that. Then there's nothing to negotiate. I stood to leave, but Damien grabbed my wrist. Gwen, wait. What if what if I could prove I'm changing? What if I got help, went to rehab, got a job? You've promised that before. This time is different. Because you're finally facing consequences? Because I finally understand what I've cost you. His grip on my wrist loosened. I never thought about how my choices affected you. I was so focused on my own problems that I didn't see I was destroying your life. I pulled my hand free. You're 22 years old, Damien. When exactly were you planning to start thinking about other people? Now. I'm thinking about it now. Too late. I walked away, leaving him sitting there with his cold coffee and his empty promises. Outside, I called Faith. Gwen, how did it go with the lawyer? I can destroy them, I said simply. All of them, completely. What do you mean, destroy them? I explained everything: the poison pill clause, the forfeiture provision, the criminal charges that would automatically follow. Faith was quiet for a long moment. Holy shit. Yeah. What are you going to do? I looked back through the coffee shop window. Damien was still sitting there, his head in his hands. I'm going to call Kent tomorrow morning, I said, and I'm going to tell him to file the paperwork. Are you sure? They stole my future, Faith. They looked me in the eye and told me to be grateful for it. I'm done being their victim. Then I support you 100%. As I hung up, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Some secrets are better left buried. Think carefully about your next move. I stared at the message, my hands shaking slightly, but instead of fear, I felt something else rising in my chest. Rage. They wanted to threaten me now, after everything they'd already done. I deleted the message and speed dialed Kent's office. Kent? It's Gwendolyn. I've made my decision. I'll have the paperwork filed by noon tomorrow, Kent said. Once it's submitted, everything happens very quickly. Are you absolutely certain? I'm certain. Then I'll see you in court, Gwendolyn. And for what it's worth, I think your grandmother would be proud. I hung up and tried to study for my organic chemistry exam, but the words on the page kept blurring together. Instead, I found myself pacing my tiny dorm room, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It didn't take long. My phone rang at 6:47 a.m., Mom's name on the screen. You vindictive little bitch, she hissed the moment I answered. How dare you? Good morning to you too, Mom. Don't you dare take that tone with me. We just received a notice from some lawyer saying our house is being seized. Our bank accounts are frozen. What did you do? I enforced Grandma's will. Your grandmother is dead, but her wishes aren't. I heard Dad's voice in the background, muffled but angry. Mom must have put me on speaker because suddenly his voice came through crystal clear. Gwendolyn, you need to call this lawyer right now and tell him there's been a mistake. There's no mistake, Dad. You stole my college fund. Now you're facing the consequences. We didn't steal anything, Mom shrieked. We used family money to solve a family problem. Damien's gambling debts aren't my problem. He's your brother, and I'm your daughter. But apparently that doesn't mean much to you. There was a pause, then Damien's voice came on the line. Gwen, please. They're talking about pressing charges. Criminal charges. I know. You could send us all to prison. I know that too. How can you be so heartless? Mom's voice was shaking now, tears mixing with rage. We raised you. We fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head. And then you stole my future to pay for Damien's mistakes. It was one mistake. It was $47,000. Dad cleared his throat. Sweetheart, let's all calm down and think about this rationally. Surely we can work something out. The time for working things out was before you emptied my college fund. We can get you the money back, he said desperately. We'll take out a loan, mortgage the house. With what credit? Your accounts are frozen, remember? The line went quiet except for Mom's muffled sobbing. Gwen? Damien said finally. What do you want from us? I want you to face the consequences of your actions for once in your life. So you're going to destroy our entire family? You destroyed it first. I hung up and immediately called Faith. They know, I said when she picked up. How bad was it? Mom called me a vindictive bitch. Dad tried to negotiate. Damien played the victim. So, typical family dynamics then. Pretty much. How are you holding up? I feel. I paused, trying to identify the emotion churning in my stomach. I feel powerful and terrified and guilty, all at the same time. The guilt will pass, Faith said firmly. You're not responsible for their choices, but I am responsible for mine, and you made the right choice. I wanted to believe her, but doubt was already creeping in. These were still my parents, still the people who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped with homework and attended my high school graduation. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Last warning, drop this now or face the consequences. I showed the message to my roommate when she got back from class. That's seriously creepy, she said. You should report it to campus security. It's probably just Damien being dramatic. But an hour later, another message arrived. We know where you live. This time, I did call campus security. Officer Martinez took the report seriously, especially when I explained the family situation. We'll increase patrols around your dorm, he said, and I'd recommend staying in public places for the next few days. That evening, I was studying in the library when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Gwendolyn? The voice was female, older, with a slight southern accent I didn't recognize. Who is this? My name is Viviana. I'm your aunt, your grandmother's other daughter. I nearly dropped the phone. Aunt Viviana, I heard about what's happening with Vera and Randolph, about the trust fund. How did you? Kent called me. He thought I should know. Her voice was warm but tired. Honey, I need to tell you some things about your family. Things your grandmother never wanted you to know while she was alive. What kind of things? Not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow? I'm driving up from Atlanta. Why now? Where have you been all these years? Viviana sighed. Your mother and we had a falling out years ago. Over Damien, actually. I tried to warn Vera that she was enabling him, that it would end badly. She chose to cut me out of your lives rather than hear the truth. So you know about his problems. Honey, I know about a lot more than his gambling. Meet me tomorrow at 2 p.m. at the Riverside Cafe downtown. There are things you need to know before this goes any further. After she hung up, I sat in the library staring at my phone. First the threatening messages, now a mysterious aunt appearing out of nowhere. It felt like my entire world was shifting beneath my feet. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a news alert from the local paper. Prominent local family under investigation for trust fund fraud. My heart stopped. Somehow the story had already leaked to the press. The article was brief but devastating. Randolph and Vera, longtime residents of Maple Heights, are under investigation for allegedly misappropriating funds from a family trust established for their daughter's education. The funds, reportedly totaling nearly $50,000, were allegedly used to pay gambling debts incurred by their son. I called Kent immediately. How did this get to the press? Court filings are public record, he said grimly. Someone at the courthouse must have tipped off a reporter. What does this mean? It means your family's dirty laundry is about to be aired very publicly. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Mom's perfect facade, Dad's reputation in the community, Damien's fragile ego. Yes, I said. I'm prepared. But as I hung up, I wondered if that was really true. The Riverside Cafe was nearly empty when I arrived at 2 p.m. I spotted Viviana immediately. She had Grandma's sharp cheekbones and steel gray eyes. But where Grandma had been warm, Viviana looked weathered by years of disappointment. You look just like Lorelei at your age, she said, standing to hug me. I'm so sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Why didn't you ever visit? Mom always said you lived too far away. Viviana's laugh was bitter. I live 3 hours south, honey. I stayed away because your mother made it clear I wasn't welcome. We ordered coffee, and Viviana pulled out a manila envelope thick with documents. Your grandmother asked me to give you these if something like this ever happened. She knew Vera would eventually sacrifice you for Damien. What are they? Proof that this isn't Damien's first time stealing from family. Viviana spread photos across the table. These are from when he was 19. He forged your grandfather's signature and emptied his savings account, $12,000. I stared at the bank statements, the forged checks, the police report that had apparently been filed and then mysteriously dropped. Mom and Dad covered it up. Vera threatened to cut your grandmother out of your lives completely if she pressed charges. Lorelai chose to let it go rather than lose access to you. So they've been enabling him for years. Honey, they've been enabling him since he was 12 and stole money from your grandmother's purse. Every time it was boys will be boys or he's going through a phase. Viviana pulled out another document. This is a psychiatric evaluation from when Damien was 16. Your parents had him assessed after he was caught stealing from other students at school. I scanned the report. Words jumped out at me: antisocial tendencies, lack of empathy, manipulative behavior patterns. The psychiatrist recommended intensive therapy and strict boundaries. Your parents ignored the recommendations and transferred him to a private school instead. They just moved him somewhere new to start over. They've been moving him somewhere new his entire life: 3 high schools, 2 colleges, 4 jobs in the past 2 years. Viviana's voice was getting harder, and every time he screws up, they clean up his mess and pretend it never happened. My phone rang, Kent's name on the screen. I need to take this. Gwendolyn, we have a problem, Kent said immediately. Your parents just showed up at my office with their own lawyer. What kind of lawyer? The expensive kind. They're claiming the trust documents were forged and that your grandmother wasn't mentally competent when she established the poison pill clause. Can they do that? They can try, but I have medical records proving your grandmother was sharp as a tack right up until she died. Still, it could complicate things. How much will this complicate things? It means we're going to court. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Can you be there? I'll be there. I hung up and explained the situation to Viviana. They're going to fight this, she said grimly. Vera never goes down without swinging. Will you testify about Damien's history? Honey, I've been waiting 20 years for someone to hold that boy accountable. Of course I'll testify. That evening, I was back in my dorm when Faith burst through the door with her laptop. You need to see this, she said, pulling up a local news website. The headline made my stomach drop. Family feud turns ugly. Daughter seeks to destroy parents over college fund. The article was worse than I'd imagined. Someone had given the reporter intimate details about our family dynamics, painting me as a vindictive daughter trying to destroy loving parents who'd made one mistake to save their troubled son. Listen to this quote, Faith said, reading from the screen. Gwendolyn has always been jealous of her brother's relationship with his parents. This lawsuit is just her way of getting revenge for years of perceived slights. Who said that? Anonymous family friend. Damien. Has to be. My phone started ringing, reporters wanting my side of the story. I turned it off and tried to focus on preparing for tomorrow's hearing. At 8 p.m., there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find a process server. Gwendolyn, you're being served with a restraining order. I stared at the papers in shock. My parents were claiming I'd threatened them and demanding I stay at least 500 feet away from their house and workplace. This is insane, Faith said, reading over my shoulder. You never threatened them. It doesn't matter. They're trying to make me look unstable before the hearing. I called Kent immediately. They're playing hardball, he said after I read him the restraining order. But this actually works in our favor. It makes them look desperate. How? Because tomorrow in court, I'm going to ask the judge why they need protection from a 20-year-old college student if they're the innocent victims they claim to be. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse wearing my best dress and carrying a folder full of documents Viviana had given me. The courtroom was small but packed. Apparently, word had gotten out about the hearing. Mom and Dad sat at the plaintiff's table with their lawyer, a sharp looking woman in an expensive suit. Mom was dressed like she was going to church, playing the role of grieving mother perfectly. Damien sat in the gallery, flanked by 2 men I didn't recognize. When he saw me, he mouthed the words, "Last chance." "All rise," the bailiff called. "The Honorable Judge Patricia Reynolds presiding." Judge Reynolds was a stern-looking woman in her 60s who clearly had no patience for family drama. "This is a hearing to determine the validity of a trust document and the enforcement of its conditions," she said briskly. "Counselors, present your arguments." My parents' lawyer stood first. Your Honor, my clients are loving parents who made a difficult decision to protect their family. The so called poison pill clause was added to the trust without their knowledge by an elderly woman who was not in her right mind. Do you have evidence of mental incompetence? Judge Reynolds asked. We have testimony from family members who witnessed erratic behavior in Mrs. Stanley's final months. Kent stood. Your Honor, I have medical records, psychiatric evaluations, and testimony from multiple witnesses proving Mrs. Stanley was mentally sharp until the day she died. What we have here is a family trying to escape the consequences of embezzling their daughter's education fund. Objection, the other lawyer called. Inflammatory language. Sustained. Mr. Mason, stick to the facts. The facts are simple, Your Honor. The defendants violated the terms of a legal trust. The trust included specific penalties for such violations. My client is simply asking that those penalties be enforced. Judge Reynolds looked at me. Miss, please stand. I stood on shaking legs. Do you understand that if I rule in your favor, your parents could face criminal charges? Yes, Your Honor. And you still want to proceed? I looked across the courtroom at my family. Mom was dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Dad stared at his hands. Damien glared at me with pure hatred. Yes, Your Honor, I want to proceed. Judge Reynolds took a 30-minute recess to review the documents. When she returned, her expression was grim. I've reviewed the trust documents, medical records, and financial statements, she said. The trust is valid, the poison pill clause is enforceable, and the defendants clearly violated their fiduciary duty. Mom let out a strangled sob. Dad's face went completely white. However, Judge Reynolds continued, before I issue my final ruling, I want to hear directly from the plaintiff. Miss, approach the bench. I walked forward on unsteady legs. This is your last chance to change your mind, she said quietly. Once I rule, there's no going back. Your parents will lose their home, face criminal charges, and your family will be destroyed. Are you absolutely certain this is what you want? I looked back at my family one more time. Mom was whispering frantically to her lawyer. Dad sat frozen in his chair. Damien was texting on his phone, even now unable to focus on the gravity of the situation. Your Honor, may I make a statement? Proceed. I turned to face the courtroom, my voice steady despite my racing heart. 2 weeks ago, I thought I had a family. Imperfect? Maybe, but still a family. Then I discovered that the people who were supposed to protect me had stolen my future to cover up my brother's gambling debts. Mom started to stand, but her lawyer pulled her back down. They didn't just take my money, they took my trust, my security, my ability to finish my education. And when I confronted them, they told me to be grateful. Grateful that they'd destroyed my life to save his. I looked directly at Damien. My brother has been enabled his entire life. Every mistake covered up, every consequence avoided, every victim ignored. The psychiatric report from when he was 16 recommended therapy and boundaries. Instead, my parents moved him to a new school and pretended nothing happened. Your Honor, my parents' lawyer interrupted, this is highly irregular. Let her finish, Judge Reynolds said sharply. I'm not doing this for revenge, I continued. I'm doing this because someone has to hold them accountable. If I don't, who will? The next victim of my brother's theft? The next family he destroys with his gambling? I turned back to Judge Reynolds. I've spent my whole life being told that family comes first, but they never treated me like family. They treated me like a resource to be used when convenient and ignored when not. So, you're certain you want to proceed? Yes, Your Honor. I want to proceed. Judge Reynolds nodded. Then I rule in favor of the plaintiff. The trust violation is confirmed, the forfeiture clause is enforced, and I'm ordering the district attorney to investigate potential criminal charges. The courtroom erupted. Mom collapsed into her lawyer's arms, wailing. Dad just sat there, staring at nothing. Damien jumped up, pointing at me. You destroyed us, he screamed. You destroyed your own family. No, I said calmly. You destroyed yourselves. I just refuse to be destroyed with you. Security escorted Damien out as he continued shouting threats. Mom and Dad left without looking at me, their lawyer guiding them toward the exit. Kent squeezed my shoulder. It's over. You did it. I don't feel like I won anything. Justice isn't always satisfying, he said, but it's still justice. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed me with questions. I pushed through them without comment until one called out, Do you have any regrets about destroying your family? I stopped and turned around. I didn't destroy my family. My family destroyed itself. I just refused to be collateral damage. Faith was waiting by my car, tears in her eyes. How do you feel? Empty, I said honestly, but also free. What happens now? Now I go back to school. I finish my degree. I build a life that doesn't depend on people who see me as expendable. My phone buzzed with a text from Viviana. Your grandmother would be proud. You're stronger than she ever imagined. That evening, I sat in my dorm room and opened my laptop. I'd been thinking about this moment for days, and I knew what I needed to do. I logged into Reddit and started typing. My parents secretly drained the college fund my grandmother left me to pay off my brother's debts. They thought I'd be forced to drop out of school, but they didn't know about the hidden clause in the will. And when my lawyer explained it to them, I wrote for 2 hours, telling the whole story. Every detail, every betrayal, every moment of doubt and rage and final resolution. When I finished, I read it through once and hit post. The responses started immediately. Hundreds of comments from people who'd been betrayed by their own families, who'd been told to sacrifice themselves for others, who'd been made to feel guilty for wanting basic fairness. You did the right thing. Family doesn't mean you have to be a doormat. Your grandmother sounds like she was an amazing woman. Sometimes the trash takes itself out. One comment stood out. How do you live with yourself after destroying your family? I typed my response carefully. I live with myself just fine because I finally chose to save the one person in my family who was worth saving me. 3 days later, I got a call from the district attorney's office. Damien had been arrested trying to flee the state. Apparently, the gambling debts were just the tip of the iceberg. He'd been running credit card scams for months. Mom and dad were charged with misappropriation of trust funds. They pled guilty and received probation in exchange for full restitution. I never spoke to any of them again, but I did graduate summa cum laude, got into medical school, and built a life surrounded by people who actually cared about me. People who would never ask me to set myself on fire to keep them warm. Sometimes justice isn't beautiful, but it's still justice. And sometimes choosing yourself is the most radical act of all.